My daughter ignored me for 15 years, until she found out I had won $36 million. That day, my daughter arrived at my new villa with her suitcases, her husband, and her parents-in-law and said, "We want our share. We need our own rooms." I smiled and did what I should have done a long time ago, and they regretted coming. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The camera flashes burned white spots into my vision. I stood there at the Florida Lottery headquarters in Tallahassee, gripping an oversized check for $36 million, while lottery officials pumped my hand and reporters shouted over each other. My face hurt from the forced smile. "Wilbert, you're the luckiest man in Florida," the lottery official's voice boomed through the microphone. "What's the first thing you'll buy?" I adjusted my grip on the ridiculous cardboard check. The thing was nearly as tall as I was. "Nothing extravagant. I've lived simply for 67 years. That won't change." A reporter in the third row stood waving her recorder. "Do you have family to share this with?" The question landed like a punch. I held my smile. "I have what I need." But the truth twisted in my chest. I had one daughter. Past tense felt more accurate after 15 years of silence. The press conference dragged on for another 20 minutes. Questions about my plans, my background, my retirement from the logistics company, where I'd managed supply chains for 40 years. Every answer I gave became public record. My full name, my face plastered across screens. By Florida law, lottery winners couldn't hide. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like valuable cargo sitting on an unguarded loading dock. The money hit my account 3 days later. After federal and state taxes carved their portions, $21 million appeared in my checking account. 21 million? The number didn't feel real. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the bank's website on my laptop. The balance mocked me with its string of zeros. I knew how to plan, how to anticipate problems, how to protect valuable cargo. That's what I'd done for 4 decades. Moved millions of dollars worth of products across the country, calculated risks, prevented theft. But this was different. This cargo was me. The next morning, I walked into First National Bank and asked for their top financial advisor. The man who met me wore a suit that cost more than my monthly rent. He shook my hand, led me to a private office, and spent the first 10 minutes congratulating me. Then his tone shifted. "With this amount, Mr. Bailey, you'll want to protect yourself from opportunists. Family claims can be—" I cut him off. "I understand risk assessment. That's what I did for 40 years. Let's talk about trusts." His eyebrows lifted slightly. We spent the next 2 hours discussing asset protection strategies, investment portfolios, and legal shields. I took notes in the same methodical way I'd once tracked shipments. Route the money through multiple accounts, establish trusts, create barriers, protect the cargo. 2 weeks later, I closed on a villa in the Orlando suburbs. $1.2 million, paid in cash. The realtor kept saying how lucky I was. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I was building a fortress I'd inhabit alone. Moving day came with December rain. Boxes filled with my modest possessions looked ridiculous in rooms designed for families. I unpacked methodically, placing each item with precision. Dishes in the kitchen cabinets, sorted by size. Books arranged alphabetically on the study shelves. Clothes hung in the master closet with military spacing between hangers. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd imagined retirement differently once. Grandkids visiting, family dinners, laughter echoing off these walls. That version died 15 years ago. I stood on the back porch that first evening, watching the sun set over unfamiliar landscape. The villa had cost more than I'd earned in my entire working life, yet it felt hollow. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts from the logistics company. Men I'd worked with for decades. I could call them, invite them over, fill the silence. I put the phone away. What would I say? Come see my millions? Admire my isolation? Lula stopped calling a long time ago. I stopped expecting her to start again. My daughter existed somewhere out there, living a life that didn't include me. I'd made peace with that, or told myself I had. 3 days after I moved in, the local news ran another story. I caught it by accident, flipping channels after dinner. Orlando retiree wins $36 million. There I was on the screen, frozen in that moment at lottery headquarters, holding the oversized check. The caption listed my name. The reporter mentioned my age, my background, the size of my winnings. My address wasn't public, but my name and face were everywhere. I turned off the television and returned to unpacking. The study still needed organizing. I'd bought new shelves for my collection of logistics textbooks, supply chain management guides, efficiency handbooks, the books from a life I no longer lived. I spent the afternoon arranging them, creating order from chaos. That's what I did best. Systems, structure, predictability. The doorbell rang at 4:30. I froze, book in hand. I hadn't ordered anything, hadn't invited anyone. The only people who knew my new address were my lawyer and the bank. I walked to the front window and peered through the blinds. An unfamiliar sedan sat in my driveway, luggage strapped to the roof rack. Two figures stood at my door, partially obscured by the porch overhang. My pulse accelerated. 40 years of protecting cargo had taught me to recognize threats. Unexpected visitors after a lottery win weren't visitors. They were problems. I moved closer to the window, angling for a better view. His breath caught. Through the window's edge, he glimpsed a face he hadn't seen in 15 years. My hand stayed frozen on the doorknob. The face outside the window belonged to a memory I'd buried deep. I forced myself to breathe, counted to 3, then opened the door. Lula stood on my porch. 38 years old now, though the years had sharpened her features rather than softened them. Behind her stood a man I recognized from old photographs, Neil, her husband. Their suitcases crowded the entrance like they'd already decided to stay. "Hi, Dad." "Surprise?" Lula's voice carried false brightness. "We thought you could use some company now that you're rich." The word Dad hit like a slap. 15 years since I'd heard her call me that. The last time she'd been 23, screaming it like an accusation. Neil stepped forward, arms crossed, his smile calculated. "Families should stick together, especially with this kind of money. We're here to help you manage everything." I said nothing, just stood there, door half open, watching them perform this rehearsed reunion. "We saw you on TV," Lula continued, her enthusiasm aggressive. "We're so proud of you. $36 million, that's incredible. We brought our things. We figured we'd stay a while, help you settle into this big house. You'll need our rooms ready tonight." Not a question, a statement. They'd already decided. 15 years collapsed in my mind. My small apartment, cramped and hot. Lula standing in the living room, Neil behind her like a shadow. She was 23, engaged, planning a wedding. I'd saved $10,000 over 2 years, every spare penny from my logistics manager's salary. "We need $50,000, Dad." Young Lula's voice echoed in my memory. "For the wedding and Neil's investment opportunity. It's a sure thing." I'd handed her the checkbook, opened to show the balance. "It's all I have, Lula. For your wedding. 10,000. Take it with my blessing." Her face had twisted. 10,000? That's insulting. Neil's startup needs 50,000 minimum. You're a warehouse manager making 60,000 a year. You're nobody. You've never accomplished anything. "It's everything I've saved," I'd said quietly. "For you." She'd thrown the checkbook at me. The pages scattered across the floor. "Then you're even more pathetic than I thought." Neil's hand had been on her shoulder, nodding agreement, encouraging the rage. They'd walked out. The door slammed. 15 years of silence followed. "Dad?" Present-day Lula waved her hand in front of my face. "Are you listening? We need to get settled." I snapped back. Lula stood there, smile bright, eyes calculating. Neil had already picked up a suitcase, stepping past me into the foyer without invitation. "You'll get exactly what you deserve," I said, my voice calm and measured. "Give me time to think about arrangements." Lula's smile widened. She exchanged a glance with Neil. They interpreted my words as agreement, as weakness. Neil carried their luggage inside, his eyes scanning the villa like he was cataloging assets. He paused at the new television, the leather furniture, the modern kitchen visible through the archway, calculating value. Lula walked through the house, opening doors. "This place needs work. The furniture's cheap. When are you upgrading?" She claimed the largest guest room. "This one's ours," then pointed to the second bedroom. "Neil needs office space for his business calls." I followed them silently, hands clenched at my sides, maintaining the careful neutrality I'd learned managing difficult clients. Show nothing, reveal no emotion, assess the situation. We should talk about getting power of attorney set up, Lula said, testing me. You're not getting any younger, Dad. Someone needs to help you make decisions about all this money. I spent 40 years managing distribution, I said, each word deliberate. I know how to allocate resources, Neil smirked. Look, Wilbert, family takes care of family. You're sitting on millions now. Lula's your only daughter. We should discuss how to distribute resources fairly. We have some ideas about investments. I'll think about what's fair, I interrupted, and let me think. They settled into their rooms, unpacking like they owned the place. I heard them through the walls, their voices carrying. He looks older, Neil said. Frailer. He'll listen to reason, Lula replied. He always does. They hadn't come for me. They'd come for $21 million. I walked to my study, closed the door, locked it, leaned against the wood, breathing deeply, forcing my pulse to slow. Then I crossed to my desk, pulled out my phone, and searched. Estate planning attorney, Orlando, Florida. The first result showed a 5-star rating. Robert Chen, specializing in estate planning and asset protection. I dialed. Chen Law Offices. The receptionist's voice was professional. Robert Chen's office. I need a consultation about inheritance law and asset protection. Tomorrow, if possible. It's urgent. Let me check his schedule. A pause. Keys clicking. He has an opening at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Would that work? I'll be there. I hung up, pulled out a fresh notebook from my desk drawer, opened to the first page, wrote at the top, Asset Protection Strategy. Outside my study, Lula and Neil's voices continued, discussing furniture upgrades, investment opportunities, how to convince me to share access to my accounts. I began writing. 40 years of supply chain management had taught me how to track valuable cargo, anticipate theft, implement countermeasures. This situation wasn't different, just required a different kind of logistics. They wanted what they thought I owed them. They'd walked away 15 years ago when I had nothing to offer except love. Now they'd returned because I had everything to take. I wrote faster, my handwriting sharp and precise. Names, dates, documentation. The truth about the checkbook thrown at my feet. The words Lula had screamed. Neil's calculating presence. Evidence. Protection. Planning. I'd spent my career ensuring valuable cargo reached its proper destination. This cargo, my money, my life, my dignity, would reach exactly where I intended. Through the walls, Lula laughed at something Neil said. The sound grated. You'll get what you deserve, I told them. I meant it. I told Lula and Neil I had banking business to handle. They didn't question it. They were too busy measuring windows for new curtains they expected me to buy. The attorney had an opening the next morning. I arrived 15 minutes early. Robert Chen's office occupied the 10th floor of a gray building in downtown Orlando. The waiting room smelled of leather and furniture polish. Legal texts lined the walls in perfect rows. A place built on order and precision. I appreciated that. Chen met me exactly at 9. 45 years old, wire-rimmed glasses, handshake firm and brief. He gestured to the chair across from his mahogany desk. Mr. Bailey, you mentioned inheritance law on the phone. How can I help? I slid a handwritten note across the desk. My assets, listed in my neat block letters. Chen read it, nodded slowly. Florida law is clear, Mr. Bailey. He pulled a leather-bound book from the shelf, open to a marked page. You have absolute right to distribute your estate as you choose. Your daughter has no legal claim to inheritance, simply by being your child. Even though she's my only child? The relief I felt surprised me. She can't argue she deserves something. She can argue anything. Chen tapped the statute with one finger. She won't win, especially with 15 years of no contact documented. I leaned forward. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 15 years. 3 days after I won the lottery, she appeared with suitcases. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. I've seen this pattern. We'll draft an airtight will. We spent the next hour on specifics. I dictated my terms clearly. Entire estate split between Florida Veterans Support, 60%, and Orange County Animal Shelter, 40%. Organizations that actually helped people who deserved it. Chen wrote, then read it back. We'll include an explicit disinheritance clause. Listen to this language. I explicitly disinherit my daughter, Lula Bailey, not due to any deficiency on her part, but because I choose to direct my assets toward causes I support. Why phrase it that way? Shows mental competence and deliberate choice. Protects against contest claims. You're not acting from spite or confusion. You're making a reasoned decision about your assets. The first piece of the puzzle locked into place. We signed the will. Chen's assistant notarized it. The document went into Chen's firm vault, legal and binding. As I stood to leave, Chen handed me a business card. If you need background information, Marcus Green is thorough and discreet. Private investigator, former police detective. I pocketed the card. That afternoon, I sat across from Marcus Green at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my villa. 52 years old, methodical eyes, hands folded on the table between us. What do you need to know? His voice carried no judgment. Financial situation, debts, employment, why they're really here. Marcus pulled out a notepad. 2 weeks, full report. Bank records if I can access them legally. 3,000 retainer. I wrote the check. 10 days crawled by. At the villa, Lula and Neil settled deeper into my space. I returned home one evening to find they'd rearranged the living room furniture. Couch moved, chairs repositioned, my carefully organized books scattered across new shelves they'd ordered without asking. We made some improvements, Lula announced, gesturing around the room. This place needs personality. I said nothing, just photographed the changes with my phone. Neil cornered me in the kitchen the next morning. He held his tablet like a weapon, showing me crude presentation slides. I have a business opportunity, Wilbert. Food delivery app, revolutionary concept. His enthusiasm felt rehearsed. Think Uber Eats meets social media. 200,000 gets us to launch. I'm offering you ground floor equity, 10% ownership. I spent 40 years in logistics, Neil. I kept my voice pleasant. I know supply chains. Food delivery margins are razor thin. I'll think about it. His jaw tightened. Thinking too long means missing out. This needs to move now. Let me consider it, I repeated. He walked away, frustration evident in his stride. That evening, Marcus called. Coffee shop, tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I arrived early. Marcus slid a manila folder across the table. Thick, heavy with pages. They're drowning, he said simply. You're the life raft. I opened the folder. Credit card statements. 6 cards, all maxed. Total, $47,000. Personal loans, $28,000, payments 2 months behind. Their Tampa apartment, $1,800 monthly, 3 months behind. Eviction notice filed in December. Neil's investment history filled 3 pages. Cryptocurrency pyramid scheme, $10,000 lost last year. Failed business registrations. Unpaid vendor invoices. Combined income, $52,000 annually. Lula worked part-time retail. Neil did commission sales, mostly unsuccessful. I photographed each document methodically. Marcus tapped the eviction notice with a blunt finger. This was filed before your lottery win went public. They had nowhere to go. Not my daughter coming home. A debtor seeking a bailout. I paid Marcus, thanked him, drove back to the villa. That evening, Lula found me in the study. Dad, I hate asking. Her voice carried false casualness. But we have some unexpected expenses. Could you spot us $5,000 just until next month? Money goes fast, Lula. I met her eyes. I need to budget carefully. This has to last me 20, maybe 30 years. You just won $21 million. Her irritation flashed before the smile returned. 5,000 is nothing. I'll think about it. She left, jaw tight. Late that night, I sat in my locked study, reviewing Marcus's reports. 85,000 in debt. Eviction pending. Failed investments. They didn't come to reconnect. They came because they had nowhere else to turn, and I was supposed to be easy money. I opened a new document on my computer, titled it Documentation Log. Started entering dates, conversations, demands, observations. Every request, every complaint, every moment they revealed themselves. Evidence collection had begun. 3 weeks passed. Mid-February brought warmer weather to Orlando. Lula and Neil grew more comfortable, more demanding. The villa felt smaller with their presence expanding into every corner. I planned carefully. Friday evening, I prepared dinner, salmon, roasted vegetables, good wine. Set the table formally, called them down from their rooms. They arrived curious, wary. I poured wine, raised my glass. Family is everything. I kept my voice warm, steady. I was wrong to let 15 years pass. Lula, I'm changing my will. You'll inherit 50% of my estate. But you must prove you've changed. Lula's face transformed. Pure joy, quickly controlled. Dad, we have changed. We want to be here. To help you. To be a family again. Neil leaned forward. We appreciate this, Wilbert. You won't regret it. I set down my glass. Wills are permanent documents. Before I sign, the community needs to see you're worthy. 6 months of charity work, consistent involvement, public demonstration of character. Neil's expression soured. 6 months seems excessive for... Lula shot him a sharp look. It's perfectly reasonable, Dad. We're happy to help. Service is important. The trap closed. They'd accepted the bait. Saturday morning, I drove them to Orange County Animal Shelter. Sarah, the volunteer coordinator, greeted us with genuine warmth. 50 years old, practical clothes, kind eyes. Mr. Bailey, wonderful to meet your family. She shook Lula's hand, then Neil's. We always need volunteers. Let me show you around. The shelter smelled of disinfectant and dog food. Kennels lined the walls. Sarah explained the routine, feeding, cleaning, walking, socializing animals waiting for adoption. Lula's smile stayed fixed, but her eyes betrayed her. She stepped carefully around puddles, kept distance from barking dogs. Neil barely touched anything, hands jammed in pockets. Your daughter doesn't seem comfortable with animals, Sarah mentioned quietly to me later. Is she okay? She's adjusting. I played the protective father. This is new for her. Give her time. She'll come around. Sarah's doubt showed, but she nodded. We volunteered 3 hours. Lula cleaned one kennel, moving slowly, grimacing when Sarah wasn't looking. Neil stood nearby, offering useless suggestions rather than helping. I photographed them periodically. Documenting our family time, I explained. They smiled for the camera. In the car afterward, Neil exploded. This is complete nonsense. Cleaning up after dogs for a will that should be ours anyway? You're her father. Lula grabbed his arm. Keep your voice down. $10 million, Neil. 6 months. We can pretend anything for that. I kept driving, watching them in the rearview mirror. We shouldn't have to pretend, Neil grumbled. He owes you. The following week, I arranged their participation in a veterans fundraiser. Hotel ballroom, 200 attendees, local media coverage. Lula and Neil stood beside me greeting donors, smiling for photographers. A reporter approached. Mr. S. Bailey, it's heartwarming to see you and your daughter reunited. How does it feel having family back in your life? I performed warmth for the camera. It's a blessing. We lost years, but we're making up for it by giving back together. Nothing matters more than family and service. The reporter loved it. The story ran the next day. Lottery winner reunites with daughter, gives back to community. Perfect. At home, the mask dropped. I overheard them that evening from my study. How much longer do we have to keep doing this? Neil's voice carried through the vents. 4.5 months, Lula answered. Then we're set. Just smile and pretend you care about homeless veterans and shelter dogs. The old man's buying it? Completely. He's so desperate for family, he'll sign anything. We just have to play nice a little longer. I recorded every word on my phone. Florida's one-party consent law meant I could record conversations in my own home. Another piece of evidence filed away. 3 more charity events over the next 2 weeks. Each time, Lula and Neil performed their roles. Each time, they complained privately afterward. Each time, I documented everything. The food bank, where Neil complained about manual labor under his breath. The literacy program, where Lula checked her phone constantly while supposedly helping children read. The park cleanup, where both disappeared for an hour claiming bathroom breaks. Volunteers noticed. Comments filtered back to me. Your daughter seems distracted. The gentleman with you doesn't appear very engaged. Are they really interested in volunteering, or is this for publicity? I defended them publicly, assured everyone they were adjusting, learning, growing into their roles. Privately, I noted every observation, every complaint, every moment of their failure. Late at night in my study, I reviewed videos on my phone, footage from the animal shelter, Lula grimacing while Sarah demonstrated kennel cleaning, screenshots from the veterans event, Neil checking his watch repeatedly while donors spoke, Photos from the park cleanup, both of them sitting on a bench scrolling phones while others worked. I saved each file to a folder labeled Evidence Collection. Then I opened a new document, titled it Phase 3, Escalation. Downstairs, Neil's voice drifted up through the floor. How much longer do we have to keep doing this? 6 weeks of charity performances. 6 weeks of documented contempt. They were getting impatient. Perfect. Late March evening, after another food bank shift, Neil found me in the kitchen while I washed my coffee cup. Lula appeared in the doorway behind him, coordinated, rehearsed. Neil stepped close, finger jabbing the air near my chest. 6 weeks of charity work. We've jumped through every hoop. $100,000. That's nothing to you. Call it an advance on inheritance. I set down the cup, stayed motionless. Inheritance is a legal term meaning assets transferred after death. I'm alive. My money remains mine. Typical? His sneer twisted his face. Sitting on millions while family struggles. Some father you are. Lula perched on the counter, legs swinging, head tilted in that practiced sympathy pose. Her voice dripped honey. Dad, we've proven ourselves. We've volunteered, done everything you asked. Don't you trust us yet? Trust is earned over years, not weeks. I kept my tone factual. And this isn't about trust. It's about financial responsibility. Her mask slipped, voice sharper. Financial responsibility? You won the lottery? That's not exactly prudent investment strategy. Neil lost control then. Let's be honest. You were nobody before that lottery ticket. A warehouse manager pushing boxes. You got lucky, nothing more. You don't deserve this money any more than we do. The insults rolled off me. I'd heard variations before. I worked 40 years, saved carefully, lived within my means. What have you earned, Neil? We're earning it now, suffering through your charity parade, pretending to care about your legacy. Lula didn't stop him, just stood there, arms crossed, nodding. Her silence spoke volumes. I offered what I could afford 15 years ago, I said. I'm offering what's fair now, nothing. Neil stormed out. The guest room door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Diane Foster stood on my porch holding a container of homemade cookies. 62 years old, friend from the senior center, kind eyes behind bifocals. Thought I'd drop these by, she smiled. Haven't seen you at the center in weeks. I let her in. Lula was in the kitchen, angrily washing dishes she'd thrown into the sink. Neil's door remained closed. Diane sensed the atmosphere immediately. Did I come at a bad time? Just family discussion. Nothing serious. We sat on the front porch with coffee. Spring air carried the scent of someone's jasmine hedge. Through the open window behind us, voices carried clearly. Neil to Lula. Your father is a selfish old man. After we get the inheritance, we're done with him. Lula's response. 6 months. We can tolerate him for 6 months. Then we never have to see him again. Diane's hand covered her mouth. She turned to me, shock written across her face. I appeared unsurprised. She whispered, Wilbert, you heard that. I know exactly what they are. They're using you. You need to protect yourself. Cut them off now. I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app. Florida law allows me to record conversations in my own home. I've been collecting evidence. Her eyes widened. You're building a case. You've been planning this from the start. I learned planning and logistics in 40 years of work. I know how to execute a strategy. After Diane left, I positioned my phone on the living room bookshelf between 2 books, recording light hidden, angled toward the seating area. Years of logistics optimization taught me efficient placement. I returned to the kitchen where Lula and Neil had emerged. No advances, no loans. I kept my voice level. The will stands as promised. 50% after I'm gone, not before. Neil's laugh came out bitter. After you're gone? And when will that be? The implicit threat hung there. Lula quickly covered. Neil didn't mean that. We're just frustrated. I understand frustration. I met Neil's eyes. You know, statistically, lottery winners don't live long. Stress, sudden lifestyle changes. When will that inheritance actually kick in? Neil means we hope you live forever, Dad. Lula's voice rose slightly. We're just planning for the future, whenever that is. I plan to live a long time. I smiled without warmth. Very long. Decades, hopefully. You might be waiting a while. Neil's jaw clenched. He left the room without another word. Late that night, I sat in my study with headphones, playing back recordings. Neil's insults, failure, nobody, selfish old man. Lula's private admission, tolerate him for 6 months, then never see him again. Neil's veiled threat about my death. I transferred the files to Robert Chen via encrypted email. Subject line, additional evidence of character, March recordings. Every word they spoke tightened the noose they didn't know they were wearing. My phone buzzed at 6:30 in the morning. Unknown number, I answered. Mr. Bailey? This is Patterson and Associates. We represent your daughter, Lula Bailey, in a matter of familial support obligations. I sat up in bed. Go on. Ms. Bailey has retained our services to pursue legal remedies regarding financial support. We're requesting $5,000 monthly support payments, citing Florida filial responsibility statutes. Send me the formal notice. I hung up. They'd hired a lawyer. Escalation as expected. I texted Robert Chen. Opposing counsel made contact. Need meeting today. His response came within minutes. 10 a.m., my office. I told Lula and Neil I had banking business. They didn't question it, too busy celebrating their legal strategy over breakfast in the kitchen. Robert Chen spread the formal letter across his desk. Patterson and Associates letterhead, 3 pages of legal posturing. Weak case, Chen said immediately. Florida filial responsibility laws exist, but rarely apply. They'd need to prove you're legally obligated to support an adult child. You're not. Can they win? No, but they can make noise. Cost you time and legal fees? That's the strategy. Annoy you into settling. I'm not settling, Chen nodded. Then we prepare our defense. I'll draft a response citing your documented generosity 15 years ago, their subsequent abandonment, their recent opportunistic return. We'll mention the charity work requirement you imposed. Shows you're not withholding support capriciously. What about the recordings? We'll hold those in reserve. Let them pursue this action. Every step they take generates more evidence of bad faith. I drove back to the villa midday. Lula and Neil waited in the living room. Their lawyer must have called them. Dad, Lula stood, tears already flowing, performance ready. We hired a lawyer because we're desperate. You won't help us, and we have nowhere else to turn. Is this what you want? Your daughter homeless? The 15-year-old wound opened. I felt my control crack. You had somewhere to turn 15 years ago. My voice shook. You turned away from me. You made that choice. We were kids. You should have given us what we needed. You were 23. I stood, anger finally breaking through. I gave what I could afford. It wasn't enough for you then. Nothing will be enough for you now. Neil stepped forward, aggressive. We're taking this to court. A judge will see a rich old man hoarding millions while his daughter suffers. You'll be ordered to pay. I've consulted attorneys better than yours. Your case is weak. Florida law doesn't compel parents to fund adult children's lifestyle choices. We'll see, Neil sneered. And when we win, we're coming for a lot more than $5,000 a month. My hands trembled. Controlled anger. Precise words. I didn't abandon you, Lula. You abandoned me. Called me pathetic. Said I was worthless. Then vanished for 15 years, until I had money worth taking. That's not. You're twisting. I have perfect memory of that day. My voice cut through her protest. Every word you said. Every insult. I also remember 15 years of silence that followed. Don't rewrite history. Neil moved closer. Physical intimidation. We're not leaving this house. You try to force us out, it'll strengthen our legal case. Heartless father evicting struggling daughter. I returned to calm. Strategy reasserting itself. Stay. Every day you're here, you provide more evidence of your true character. I'll document everything. Neil's mocking laugh. Document what? That we're living in our family home? That you're occupying property you have no legal claim to while threatening lawsuits. Yes, that's exactly what I'll document. They left me standing in the living room. I returned to my study, hands still shaking. The emotional release had been necessary, but dangerous. I couldn't afford to lose control again. Late that night, I reviewed the villa's floor plan, marked recording device locations with red dots. Kitchen, living room, hallway near guest rooms. Comprehensive coverage. Loud voices from the guest wing. Lula and Neil arguing. Her voice carried, "This isn't working. He's not scared." Neil's response. Then we need something bigger, a public event where he can't hide. I leaned closer to the door, recording phone in hand. A notification appeared on my computer screen. Reminder, Orange County Veterans Gala, April 15th. Speech requested. I stared at the date. 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks while Lula and Neil plotted their next move. I had bigger plans of my own. Robert Chen's conference room table disappeared under evidence. Recordings, photos, detective reports. We reviewed everything methodically. The Veterans Gala has 300 expected attendees, Chen said, tapping the venue layout. Local media coverage, prominent community members, perfect venue for revelation. I clicked through the presentation on his laptop. Audio clips edited for clarity, photos arranged chronologically, timeline graphics. I want everything public. Their own words, their own actions. No spin, no interpretation, just facts. Once those recordings play publicly, Lula and Neil will retaliate legally. Chen's eyes met mine. Defamation lawsuit, emotional distress claims, everything they can file. Truth is absolute defense against defamation. I have receipts, timestamps, witness corroboration. Let them sue. Chen nodded slowly. Then we're ready. I'll have our litigation team on standby for immediate response. 2 weeks before the gala, I found them in the villa living room. I held formal invitations embossed with gold lettering. I'm being honored at the Veterans Gala for my charitable contributions. I kept my voice warm. Despite our current difficulties, I want my daughter there when I announce my charitable legacy plans. Lula's eyes narrowed. You're announcing the will publicly? In front of everyone? I'm announcing my long-term plans, yes. Family should be present for significant moments. Neil's face lit up. We'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. They thought they'd won. The week before the event, I stood in the Ritz-Carlton ballroom with the AV technician. We tested every audio clip, every transition. Volume levels good here? The technician adjusted speakers. Neil's voice filled the empty ballroom. The old man is nothing without that lottery money. Perfect, I said. May 15th arrived. The Ritz-Carlton Orlando Grande Lakes ballroom glittered with chandeliers. 300 guests in evening wear. Veterans advocates, community leaders, donors. Local news crews set up cameras along the walls. Lula and Neil arrived dressed formally. She wore a blue gown, pearls borrowed from someone. He'd rented a tuxedo. They smiled for cameras in the receiving line. Thank you for coming. I shook their hands warmly while flashes popped around us. It means everything, Neil whispered to Lula as they moved past. He's going to announce the will publicly. We're about to become very respected heirs. I heard him. Let him believe it. Dinner service began. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, expensive wine. The Veterans Organization president gave a speech about sacrifice and service. Then his introduction. And now Wilbert Bailey, whose generosity has transformed our programs. I took the podium. Lula and Neil sat in the front row, confident smiles fixed in place. Thank you for honoring me tonight. I gripped the podium edges. I want to talk about family, sacrifice, and what we truly value. I discussed veteran service, parallels to personal sacrifice. The audience nodded along, engaged. Then I shifted. My daughter Lula is here tonight. We were estranged for 15 years. When I won the lottery, she returned. I want to show you why. The screen behind me lit up. I clicked the remote. Neil's voice filled the ballroom through premium speakers. The old man is nothing without that lottery money. He's always been a failure. We just need to wait him out. Gasps rippled through the audience. Lula's face drained of all color. Neil froze, fork halfway to his mouth. I clicked again. Lula's voice. I'll tolerate him a few more months, then get the money and never see him again. Photos appeared on screen. Lula, grimacing at the animal shelter. Neil on his phone, ignoring the volunteer coordinator. Third clip, Neil asking, when will that inheritance kick in? The implied threat clear. Timeline graphics showed the 3-day gap between lottery broadcast and their arrival. My voice steady over the presentation. 15 years ago, they demanded $50,000. I offered $10,000, my entire savings. They called me pathetic and disappeared until I had $21 million. Final slide, my official will. Redacted but clear. Florida Veterans Support, Orange County Animal Shelter, and the clause, I specifically disinherit my daughter, Lula Bailey. These organizations serve those who sacrificed everything, I said. My family sacrificed nothing but appeared when money did. My legacy goes to those who deserve it. Silence, then scattered applause, then overwhelming sustained applause. Veterans in the audience stood, some saluting. Lula shot to her feet. How dare you? You're a liar. Neil lunged toward the podium. Security guards in black suits intercepted smoothly, professional hands redirecting him toward the exit. That's out of context, Lula screamed. You recorded us illegally. Florida is a one-party consent state. My voice remained calm, amplified through the microphone. These recordings are completely legal, and context doesn't change your words. An older veteran stood during the applause. Sir, you honor us by ensuring your legacy supports those who served. Your family's betrayal makes your generosity even more meaningful. Genuine emotion cracked my composure for the first time. You gave years of service. They gave 3 days of performance. The choice was obvious. Security escorted Neil and Lula toward the exit, still shouting. Reporters followed, microphones extended, cameras rolling. This isn't over, Neil's voice carried across the ballroom. You can't humiliate us publicly and get away with it. I stood at the podium, microphone still live. I didn't humiliate you. I played your own words. You humiliated yourselves. Lula screamed from the doorway. We're family. You owe us. My final response. I owed you love and support when you were a child. I gave that. You owe me nothing now. I owe you nothing. We're even. The doors closed behind them. The ballroom erupted in applause again. I stayed at the podium, composed, as chaos swirled in their wake. 6 days later, Robert Chen called. They filed. Defamation, emotional distress, elder exploitation, everything we expected. How bad? Weak. Patterson and Associates, the same firm from before, asking for $5 million in damages. Judge Margaret Holloway assigned. She's fair, but doesn't tolerate nonsense. 2 weeks later, I stood outside Orange County Courthouse. June morning, humid, sun already intense. Chen met me on the steps. Both hearings today, he said. Eviction at 10, defamation preliminary at 2. Efficient scheduling. The eviction hearing took 20 minutes. Lula and Neil's attorney couldn't dispute the facts. They'd refused to leave when asked. No lease, no rental agreement, no legal right to occupy my property. Judge Holloway's gavel fell. 30 days to vacate. Next case. The defamation hearing drew more attention. Media packed the gallery. My presentation from the gala had gone viral. Local news, social media, national coverage. Patterson, their attorney, looked tired. Your Honor, Mr. Bailey deliberately humiliated our clients in a public forum, causing severe emotional distress and reputational harm. Judge Holloway turned to Chen. Response? Truth is an absolute defense to defamation in Florida. Chen placed authenticated recordings on the bench. Every statement Mr. Bailey made was substantially true, supported by audio evidence, photographic documentation, and witness testimony. The recordings were made without consent, Patterson objected. Florida is a one-party consent state, Chen replied calmly. Mr. Bailey was present for, or the subject of, every recorded conversation. Completely legal. Judge Holloway reviewed the evidence, listened to audio clips through headphones, studied photos, read witness statements from Diane Foster and shelter volunteers. She removed the headphones. Mr. Patterson, your client's own words condemn them. Nothing Mr. Bailey presented appears false or misleading. Truth is indeed an absolute defense. But the emotional harm was self-inflicted by your client's choices and statements, dismissed with prejudice. The gavel struck. Mr. Bailey may file for costs under Florida's anti-SLAPP provisions. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me. Mr. Bailey, how does it feel to have the court validate your actions? I chose words carefully. I don't feel victorious. I feel finished. This needed to end, and now it has. Will you pursue damages against your daughter? No. She has nothing left to take. This was never about money for me. It was about truth. Days later, I returned to the villa. The guest wing sat empty. They'd taken their possessions and fled, leaving the state according to Marcus Green's update. California, apparently. Fresh start, same patterns. Diane called that evening. I saw the news. The judge threw out their entire case. How does it feel? I don't feel victorious, I repeated, staring at my reflection in the kitchen window. I feel finished. This needed to end, and now it has. You protected yourself. You did what was necessary. Necessary. That's the right word, not satisfying, just necessary. Late that night, I walked through the empty guest bedroom, found a forgotten photo under the bed. Old picture of young Lula, maybe 8 years old, smiling genuinely. Before money mattered, before demands and insults, before 15 years of silence. I stared at it for a long moment, then placed it face down on the dresser, walked to the window. My own moving truck sat in the driveway. This villa held too many recent memories. I'd found a smaller place, more appropriate for one person, less echo, less empty space. My phone rang. Marcus Green. Update on Lula and Neil, he said. You'll want to hear this, I answered. Go ahead. A month after the court rulings, Marcus called with information I hadn't requested but wasn't surprised to receive. I'd moved into a townhouse by then, smaller than the villa, more appropriate for one person. 2 bedrooms, modest kitchen, patio overlooking a shared garden. The place had character, original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, morning light that streamed through east-facing windows, less echo than the villa, less empty space to remind me of what I'd lost, or thought I'd lost. The townhouse sat in a neighborhood where people actually talked to each other. Mrs. Chen next door brought me soup when I moved in. The retired teacher across the street invited me to join his morning walking group. Small kindnesses from people who didn't know about the lottery, didn't care about the money, they just saw a new neighbor. Thought you'd want to know, Marcus said over the phone. Your daughter and son-in-law's situation has deteriorated significantly. I poured coffee from the French press Diane had given me as a housewarming gift, settled into my reading chair by the window. Go on. Neil's unemployed 3 months now. That viral video from the gala, it's been viewed over 2 million times. Every job application, someone recognizes him. Background checks pull up the news coverage. No one will hire him. I sipped the coffee, said nothing. Lula's working retail in Tallahassee using her maiden name. 40 hours a week at $11 an hour. Their debt's at $110,000 now. Legal fees on top of everything else. Credit cards, personal loans, the eviction settlement. Marriage. Neighbors report constant fighting. Police called twice for domestic disturbances. Verbal only, but loud. I give it 6 months. Tops. Maybe less. I stared at my coffee, watching steam rise in lazy spirals. I didn't want them destroyed. I wanted them gone. There's a difference. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Sometimes consequences are harsher than intentions. You pulled back a curtain. The world saw what was behind it. They're living with that exposure. Is that guilt you're trying to instill? No. His voice was firm. It's observation. You asked for facts. I'm giving them. What you feel about those facts is your business. After we hung up, I sat at my small kitchen table, sunlight warming the wood. I'd chosen this table carefully. Round, no sharp corners, room for 4. Optimistic, maybe, or just practical. Sometimes friends visited. I thought about Lula at $11 an hour. 40 hours weekly was $1,700 before taxes, maybe $1,300 after. How did you pay down $110,000 on $1,300 monthly? You didn't. Not in any reasonable time frame. I felt something then. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Just a hollow sadness that this was how it had to end. 3 days later, my doorbell rang. Late afternoon, July heat finally breaking. I opened the door, expecting a package or maybe Mrs. Chen with more soup. Lula stood alone. No Neil, no luggage, no designer clothes or borrowed jewelry. She wore jeans and a plain t-shirt, both worn but clean. She looked exhausted, thinner, deep circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her hands twisted together nervously. Can I come in? Her voice barely carried. Please, just to talk. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution, but curiosity pulled at me, and something older, deeper, residual paternal instinct that 40 years of hurt couldn't completely erase, made me step aside. She entered slowly, like she expected me to change my mind. Perched on the sofa edge, back straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I remained standing near the bookshelf, maintaining physical and emotional distance. My hand rested near my phone, just in case. "Dad, I was wrong." Tears started immediately. About everything. 15 years ago, and now. I've been reflecting. The lawsuit, losing everything, Neil leaving, it made me see what I'd become. I watched her perform. 40 years of managing people taught me to spot genuine emotion versus calculated presentation. I stayed silent, let her continue. "I was greedy. I used you. I said horrible things." She looked up, tears tracking mascara she'd clearly applied in the car. "You deserved so much better. I don't want your money. I just want my father back. Can we start over? Just as family?" Every father wants to believe their child can change. That's hardwired into us. Some biological imperative that survives betrayal and disappointment. But 40 years of logistics taught me to trust patterns, not promises. Data over hope. I moved to the chair across from her, maintained the coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. "What changed, Lula? You knew about the money when you sued me for $500,000. You knew about it when you and Neil recorded those complaints I played at the gala. What specifically changed in the past month?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Losing everything made me realize what matters. Family matters. You matter to me." "You realized that after filing a lawsuit against me?" I kept my voice level, analytical. "Your timing raises questions about motivation." "I know how it looks. It looks like someone who exhausted all legal options and is now trying the emotional approach." I leaned back. "It looks like someone who calculated that contrition might succeed, where litigation failed." Her face crumpled. "That's not fair." "Fair?" The word came out sharper than intended. I softened my tone. "Lula, you sued me. You tried to take money from me through the courts after trying to manipulate it from me through performance. Now you're here claiming you just want family. Do you understand why I'm skeptical?" She started crying harder. "I've changed. I have. Neil leaving, losing the court case, working retail. It humbled me. I see everything differently now." I stood, walked to my desk, retrieved a document from the drawer, returned and handed it to her. "This is my final will, notarized last week." Read the relevant sections. She took the papers with trembling hands, started reading. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, shock, anger. She read one section twice, then looked up at me. $1? Your own daughter inherits $1 while strangers get millions?" "Not strangers." I sat back down, crossed my legs. "Organizations serving those who gave everything and asked for nothing. Veterans who sacrificed years of their lives. Animals who never had choices. Elderly people who worked hard and still struggle. The opposite of what you've done. But I'm your daughter, which is why you get $1 instead of nothing." I leaned forward, hands folded. "Florida law requires specific mention to prevent accidental omission claims. That dollar proves I didn't forget you. I explicitly chose this." Her hands shook, rattling the papers. "How can you do this? Let me be very clear about something." I held her gaze. "I love you, Lula. That's not conditional. You're my daughter, and some part of me will always love you. But I don't trust you. Love doesn't require trust, but relationships do. You destroyed trust 15 years ago when you called me pathetic and walked away. You destroyed it again this year when you returned only because I had money." "That's not true." "It is true. 3 days after my lottery win aired on television, you showed up. 15 years of silence and suddenly 3 days. The timing tells the story." "How can you say you love me while cutting me out?" Her voice rose, tears flowing freely. "That's not love. Love means wanting good for you. Trust means believing you want good for me." I kept my voice steady. "I have one, not the other. I want you to be happy, healthy, successful. I want you to find genuine relationships and purposeful work. That's love. But I can't rebuild what you won't stop breaking. That requires trust." She stared at the will, then back at me. "So that's it? I get nothing. You get the consequences of your choices. We all do." I gestured at the document. "I'm leaving my estate to organizations that help people who sacrificed without expecting reward. People who serve others instead of serving themselves. That's the legacy I want. Not family name, not bloodline. Impact and service." The tears stopped abruptly, like turning off a faucet. Rage flooded her face, replacing the calculated desperation. After everything, you're really leaving me? $1? She stood, papers falling to the floor. You're a bitter old man hoarding money. You'll die alone with your precious charities. No family, no legacy except checks to strangers? I remained seated, calm. I won't die alone. I'll die surrounded by people who cared about me before I had money, and who'll care after I'm gone. People who volunteer beside me at the shelter, friends at the senior center, neighbors who bring me soup. You had that opportunity twice, once 15 years ago, again this year. You chose differently both times. She stormed toward the door, face twisted with fury, turned back, finger pointing. I hope you enjoy being right. I hope your righteousness keeps you warm at night. I'm not trying to be right, I spoke to her, retreating back. I'm trying to be safe. There's a difference. I have people who value me for who I am, not what I have. You could have been one of them. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on my wall. I walked to the window, pushed aside the curtain, watched her get into a beat-up sedan, primer spots on the fenders, cracked windshield. She sat motionless in the driver's seat. Minutes passed. 5, then 10. I could see her shoulders shaking, hands pounding the steering wheel repeatedly. Grief or rage, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. Then the engine started. She backed out fast, tires squealing slightly on the asphalt. The car disappeared around the corner. I stood at the window long after she'd gone, hand resting on the curtain. This was the ending. Not the one I'd wanted as a young father holding a newborn daughter in the hospital, counting her tiny fingers, imagining her future. Not the one I'd dreamed about during her childhood, teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, planning for her college years, but the one her choices created, and mine. The acceptance of that felt heavy, but not crushing, just real. That evening, Diane arrived with dinner. I'd mentioned Lula's visit when she called earlier, and she'd insisted on coming over. She brought her famous chicken pot pie, still warm from the oven. We sat on my small patio, evening cooling the summer air. The shared garden below showed signs of careful tending. Tomatoes on stakes, basil in containers, marigolds bordering the paths. How do you feel? She set down her fork, studied my face. Sad, but certain. I met her eyes. She didn't come to reconnect. She came to position herself for future access. I heard it in every word, saw it in every gesture. This was strategy, not sincerity. Diane nodded slowly. How could you tell? The tears stopped the instant I made the inheritance final, like flipping a switch. Grief doesn't work that way. Manipulation does. You gave her every chance. Multiple chances. 15 years ago, I offered what I could. This year, I offered charity work as a path to rebuild trust. Tonight, I would have accepted genuine accountability. She chose performance every time. Diane reached across the small table, squeezed my hand briefly. The senior center is organizing a fundraiser for the veterans program you support. They want to name a scholarship after you. The Bailey Veterans Scholarship. I shifted uncomfortably. I don't need my name on anything. It's not about what you need. It's about what your actions inspired in others. She smiled. You donated $250,000 to their programs. That matters. That creates change. Let people honor that. My phone rang. Jerry from the retirement community, inviting me to join their weekly poker game Wednesday nights. I accepted, made a note on the calendar. Before I could set the phone down, it rang again. Sarah from the animal shelter, thanking me for the recent donation that funded their new medical wing. Would I attend the ribbon cutting next month? After the second call, I looked up to find Diane watching me with knowing eyes. What? I asked. You're building something? She gestured with her wine glass. A life, a real one. Not the isolated existence you had at the villa, and not the family you tried to force into being. This is organic. Real connections with real people. I realized something then, sitting in the cooling evening with a friend who asked nothing from me except my company. This was my family now, chosen, not inherited, built on mutual respect and genuine care, not obligation or financial incentive. I spent 40 years optimizing supply chains, I said quietly, moving resources from point A to point B efficiently. I'm doing the same thing now, just with time and money instead of cargo, directing it where it's needed, where it'll do the most good. Logistics of generosity, Diane said. Something like that. We sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged one by one above the garden. Somewhere, Lula was driving back to Tallahassee, back to her minimum wage job and mounting debt, back to consequences she'd created. I felt no triumph in that, no satisfaction in her struggle. Just the quiet certainty that I'd protected myself while staying true to my values, that I'd drawn necessary boundaries while maintaining my capacity for love, even if that love existed at a safe distance. The evening deepened. Diane gathered the dishes. Same time next week. I'll be here. After she left, I remained on the patio. The townhouse lights glowed behind me, warm and welcoming. My home, my space, built for one but open to many. Earned peace felt different than I'd imagined. Not triumphant, not complete, just sustainable. That was enough. Late August brought cooler mornings and the promise of autumn. I'd developed a routine that felt sustainable, even comforting in its predictability. Coffee on the patio at sunrise, watching the shared garden wake up. Volunteer work 3 days weekly, animal shelter, Tuesdays, Veterans Center, Thursdays, literacy program Saturdays, poker game Wednesday evenings with Jerry and the retirement community group, Sunday brunch with Diane at the corner cafe. Simple, purposeful, mine. The townhouse had become more than just a place to sleep. I'd hung photographs on the walls, not of family, but of moments. The ribbon cutting at the Veterans Center, a group photo from the animal shelter's Volunteer Appreciation Day, a candid shot Diane had taken of me reading to children at the literacy program. These were my people now, my chosen connections. Marcus called one morning while I was reviewing the monthly statements from my financial advisor. The investments were performing well, generating more income than I could spend, which was the point, more to give away. Final update, then I'm closing your file, Marcus said without preamble, professional to the end. Go ahead. Lula and Neil divorced. Papers filed in Tampa last week. Irreconcilable differences, no fault filing. She moved in with her mother in Georgia, Savannah area. He disappeared. California, maybe Nevada, using different names according to my contacts. They're done. Completely. I absorbed this information, waiting for some emotional response. Relief? Satisfaction. Nothing came. Just acknowledgement of facts. Appreciate you keeping me informed, Marcus. One more thing. He paused, and I heard papers rustling. A letter arrived at my office for you. From Lula. Postmarked Savannah, Georgia. Want me to open it? My hand tightened on the phone. Send it. I'll decide whether to read it. Understood. I'll mail it today. Wilbert, he paused again. You did what you had to do. Don't second-guess it. I'm not. Good. Take care of yourself. The letter arrived 2 days later in a plain manila envelope from Marcus's office. Inside, a single white envelope addressed in handwriting I barely recognized, neater than I remembered, with careful formation of each letter, almost like she'd drafted it multiple times before committing to final copy. I sat on the patio with it, holding the envelope without opening. Sunlight filtered through the oak tree overhead, dappling the table. Birds sang in the garden below. Mrs. Chen was planting mums in the beds near the walking path. Normal life happening all around me. Diane was due in an hour. We'd planned to visit the new community center, funded partially by my donation, the Bailey Opportunity Center, though I still felt uncomfortable with my name on the building. They'd insisted. Community leaders, veterans, advocates, the city council member who'd championed the project. Your generosity made this possible, they'd said. Let us honor that. Finally, I slid my finger under the envelope flap and opened it. 3 pages, handwritten on lined paper. Her handwriting covering each page carefully. Dad, I won't ask you to forgive me. I don't deserve it, and I understand that now. You were right about everything. Every accusation, every boundary, every decision you made to protect yourself from me. I came to your townhouse looking for an opening, not reconciliation. You said you had 18 million left, and immediately my mind calculated pathways back to money. Even in that moment, when I was crying and claiming I just wanted my father back, part of me was strategizing. You saw through it. You always did. Neil and I are done. The divorce finalized last week. It should have ended years ago. We enabled each other's worst qualities, His aggression and my manipulation fed off each other in toxic ways. Apart, maybe we can both become better people. Together, we were poison. I'm living with Mom now in Savannah. She's been kind, which I don't deserve. I'm working retail, a bookstore actually. It's quiet work, gives me time to think. I'm paying down the debt slowly. At my current rate, it'll take about 12 years to clear everything. That seems fair. I created this situation. I should dig myself out. You said you loved me but didn't trust me. I finally understand the difference. Love is what you gave me as a child, the bedtime stories, the help with homework, the college fund you started before I rejected you. Love is what you offered 15 years ago when you gave me your entire savings, even though it wasn't enough for my demands. Love is what you tried to give me this year, despite everything I'd done, setting up that charity work as a path to rebuild something. Trust is what I destroyed. Repeatedly, deliberately. First by calling you worthless and walking away. Then by returning only when you had money. Then by suing you when manipulation failed. I broke trust so many times, I don't even know if it's repairable. I'm not asking for anything, not money, not reconciliation, not even a response to this letter. I'm just acknowledging truth. You protected yourself. You should have. I was dangerous to you. Financially, emotionally, psychologically. You were right to cut me out. The $1 inheritance was perfect, actually. It shows you didn't forget me. You made a deliberate choice. That's somehow better than being completely forgotten. It means you thought about it, weighed the options, and chose this path consciously. There's respect in that, even if it hurts. Maybe someday I'll be someone worth trusting. Not for inheritance. That ship has sailed and I sank it myself. Just for its own sake. Being trustworthy because that's who I should be, not because there's something to gain from it. Mom asks about you sometimes. I tell her you're doing well, living your life, helping people. She says that sounds like the man she remembers from when I was young, before everything fell apart. I won't contact you again. You deserve peace. You earned it through decades of work, through surviving my betrayal, twice, through building something meaningful with your resources. I hope the charities do amazing work. I hope the veterans get the support they need. I hope the animals find good homes. I hope you're happy, Dad. Even if I can't be part of that happiness, I'm sorry. For everything. Those words don't fix anything, but they're true. Lula, I read the letter 3 times, letting each word sink in. Then I folded it carefully, placed it in my desk drawer. Acknowledgement preserved, but not answered. Some doors stayed closed for good reason, even when the person on the other side finally understood why. The dedication ceremony for the Bailey Opportunity Center happened 3 days later. Mid-morning, warm sunshine, the new building gleaming with fresh paint and possibilities. The structure housed both veterans services and job training programs. My donation had funded the construction, and ongoing support from other donors would sustain operations. Over 100 people attended. Veterans I'd met through volunteer work, some in uniform, others in civilian clothes. Community leaders I'd worked with on various projects. Diane stood beside me as speakers described the program's goals: job placement assistance, counseling services, skills training, educational scholarships. The ribbon cutting felt surreal. Me holding oversized scissors while cameras flashed. People applauding. A plaque unveiled near the entrance. Bailey Opportunity Center, dedicated to service and second chances. Afterward, a young veteran approached, 26 years old, Marine Corps tattoo visible on his forearm, eyes bright with purpose. He shook my hand firmly. Sir, I want to thank you. This program gave me a path forward when I was completely lost. His voice carried conviction. I served 8 years, came home, couldn't find work, couldn't adjust. This place, he gestured at the building. It gave me direction. I start college next month on the Bailey Veterans Scholarship, Criminal Justice Program. I want to help other veterans navigate the system. You earned it through your service, I said. I just moved money around. You did the hard part. Serving, surviving, showing up to rebuild your life. Still, it matters. You matter. He walked away to join his family. Young wife, toddler daughter, building his future with tools I'd helped to provide. An older veteran, Vietnam era, approached next. He must have been 70, face weathered but eyes sharp. Mr. Bailey, I read about what happened with your daughter, the news coverage, the court case. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. I wanted to say, you did the right thing. Family isn't just blood, it's who shows up. Who cares when there's nothing to gain? Your daughter showed you who she was. You believed her. That took courage. Thank you, I managed, throat tight. My son hasn't spoken to me in 20 years. Different reasons, but same result. I used to feel guilty about it. Your story helped me understand. Sometimes love means distance. Sometimes protection requires boundaries. He gripped my shoulder briefly. You gave your resources to people who earned it through service. That's honorable. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. The conversations continued. Person after person sharing how the programs had helped them, thanking me for making it possible. Each story reinforced what I'd chosen. Impact over inheritance, service over bloodline, purpose over family obligation. Over the following weeks, I saw the ripple effects multiply. 50 veterans receiving educational funding through the scholarship program. 200 animals finding permanent homes through improved shelter facilities. Medical care, behavior training, adoption support. Elderly community members accessing services they needed. Meal delivery, transportation, social programs preventing isolation. The literacy program expanded to serve 3 additional schools. The food bank bought a refrigerated truck with my donation, tripling their capacity to serve families. The youth mentorship program hired 2 full-time coordinators, supporting at-risk teenagers toward graduation. My lottery winnings, that random stroke of luck, that ticket purchased on impulse at a gas station, was creating waves of positive change that would continue long after I was gone. A legacy built on purpose and impact, rather than family name or genetic connection. One evening in late August, Diane and I sat on my patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. She'd brought wine and cheese, turned our weekly dinner into an impromptu celebration of nothing in particular, just existing together, which had become its own kind of celebration. Second-guessing yourself, she sipped her wine, eyes on the horizon. No, mourning what could have been, maybe, but not questioning what had to be. I watched clouds shift colors as the sun descended. When Lula visited, when she sat on my sofa crying, I saw a calculation in her eyes. The performance. She mentioned 18 million, and I saw her mind working. Computing angles. She wasn't there for reconciliation. She was there for positioning. You gave her every chance, multiple chances over multiple decades. She made her choices. You made yours. That's not cruelty. It's survival. My phone buzzed. Text from Jerry about Wednesday's poker game. Another from Sarah at the animal shelter about volunteer appreciation dinner next month. A third from the senior center about their upcoming fundraiser. You know what I realized? I set down my wine glass, turned to face her. For 40 years, I managed supply chains, moving things from where they were to where they needed to be, optimizing routes, minimizing waste, ensuring valuable cargo reached the right destination. That's what I'm still doing, just with money instead of cargo, moving resources to people who need them, who'll use them well, who deserve support. Diane smiled, that knowing expression I'd come to appreciate. Logistics of generosity. You've said that before. I think you've finally internalized it. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just learning to live with peace instead of always preparing for the next crisis. I gestured at the garden below, the townhouse behind us, the simple life I'd built. This is enough. More than enough. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness gathered. Stars emerged one by one, competing with the streetlights. Somewhere in Savannah, Lula was working her bookstore shift, paying down debt, living with consequences. Somewhere in California or Nevada, Neil was hiding under another name, starting over or repeating old patterns. Their paths had diverged from mine permanently. That separation used to feel like failure, the father who couldn't maintain relationship with his only child. Now it felt like wisdom. Some relationships were toxic, no matter how much you loved the person. Some boundaries were necessary for survival. I felt no triumph in their struggles, no satisfaction in their separation or financial hardship, just quiet acceptance that this was the cost of protection, the price of maintaining integrity and self-preservation. The evening cooled. Diane stood to leave, gathering dishes. Same time next week, we're organizing that book drive for the literacy program. I'll be there. After she left, I remained on the patio, coffee growing cold in my hand, forgotten. The townhouse lights glowed behind me, warm, welcoming mine. The community garden below showed signs of autumn preparation, neighbors harvesting late tomatoes, planting fall vegetables, children playing in the pathways between beds. I'd spent 67 years building a life, lost some of it to choices others made, Lula's rejection, Neil's manipulation, 15 years of estrangement. Rebuild it into something different, something smaller but more meaningful. Not the life I'd imagined as a young father, not the family dinners or grandchildren visiting or legacy passed through bloodline, but a life nonetheless, purpose-driven, service-oriented, connected to people who valued me for who I was, not what I had. The lottery hadn't brought me happiness. $36 million couldn't do that. I'd learned that lesson quickly. Money amplified who you already were, revealed character rather than creating it. It had given me resources to create purpose, help others, build boundaries, choose family based on mutual respect rather than genetic obligation. That was enough, more than enough. Peace found me here, in this quiet townhouse, with this chosen community, doing this purposeful work. Not dramatic peace, not the triumphant vindication I might have imagined. Just sustainable daily peace, waking up without dread, going to bed without regret, spending days doing work that mattered to people who appreciated it. The letter from Lula sat in my desk drawer, acknowledgement of truth, apology without expectation of response. I wouldn't answer it. Some doors stayed closed, even when the person on the other side finally understood why they'd been locked. But I also wouldn't throw it away. It represented growth, however late. Recognition of harm caused, acceptance of consequences. That deserved preservation, even if it didn't warrant response. The moon rose over the garden, nearly full. I finished my cold coffee, stood, stretched muscles stiff from sitting. Tomorrow I'd volunteer at the animal shelter. Tuesday's routine. Then Wednesday poker game. Thursday Veterans Center. Saturday literacy program. Simple rhythms. Chosen obligations. Purposeful days. I'd won the lottery and lost my daughter. Gained millions and lost family. But I'd found something else. Community. Purpose. Peace. Finally. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.